Hi, my name is Teresa Talea. What is a higher self really? The term higher self is commonly known as a New Age term, which is honestly why I prefer not to say it. But instead of eschewing the term altogether, I think it is important to properly define because it does represent something real. In this talk, I will discuss what a higher self is and what it is not, and what it also does and does not. I will also speak from my own experience. I think I will start with what a higher self is not, because that is the more popular view, especially in the New Age community and even in Hinduism, esoteric belief systems, Buddhism, all of these beliefs that have a oneness perspective. So a higher self is not a big type of Gestalt consciousness. It is not a disembodied spirit. It is not something undefinable to where then it's like this big God consciousness to where it then, when it gains density, it divides itself into layers. So then we basically are fragments of this higher self being that then have to come together to gain our oneness and be it again beyond creation. This view is a very big view of a higher self, but entities also in dimensional realms claim to be a higher self, where they are the number one, they're the original being, and then in lower dimensions they divided themselves up. Somehow their essence, their consciousness, to create lower dimensional versions of them. And so I don't want to say the names because it just feels not good energy. So I won't. But I know of many of the entity names that claim this. So they will claim to be basically us, but we're not the same. And then we have to call upon them to be filled with their spirit and essence, to then be guided back through the dimensional ascension process to become them again. So basically we don't have our individuality or our self. A higher self, that word makes it seem self as though it is distinctly us, but it's not. They are actually different beings. Also, what a higher self is not is something vertical, straight from us, as though our chakras line up and they must meet us through our chakras vertically down. There's a common ritual called Kundalini awakening, and it activates and forces open the base chakra up to the crown chakra to open them up for an external entity and energy to come down and fill you. But it's taught that this external entity is you as your higher self, when it's actually not. What a higher self also is not, it is not multiple beings or multiple selves. There's only one higher self throughout all of the fragmented creation. And I say fragmented because there's an element of death in our universe. It is also not half of another being, as in the twin flame type of story where you have to come as a partner, like a male or female partner together to complete each other, like a yin or yang. And so it is distinctly its own being, a complete whole being on its own. So now I will talk about what it is, because this is where the life is in this. The higher self, when having pure intentions, is an amazing being. It technically, why it's called higher is just because it comes from a higher dimension and we are in a lower dimension. That's really it. It's not anything bigger than that, and so whatever spin is added to that, it doesn't need to be there. So the higher dimensional being traveled down from their galactic area, their higher dimension, to be near Earth to help us because of all of the genetic manipulation, all of the energetic manipulation that humans have been subjected to for our entire existence on Earth, and the Earth itself, with all the death science here, that a lot of higher dimensional beings took it upon themselves to come to help steer it back because of the agendas of self-serving beings wanting to take Earth and its inhabitants elsewhere, off the eternally aligned track. And a lot of beings are saying no way. And so in order to be a higher self, when a developing fetus is in the womb, about a month in, at least a month in, when the fetus is growing, about a split second before, there is an internal integration with its own type of deeper inner template with its own consciousness. The higher self can come and connect with the Earth's morphogenetic field that has form and impart a portion of its own consciousness into that developing fetus. And it does seem odd and seem strange. I don't know if it's natural or not here, because it's obviously allowed, but any concept of a higher self, any action of a higher self isn't eternal anyways, because there's some type of a fragmentation here that's not completely actualized in our third density template. Like, for example, humans have a 12-strand DNA template, but only 2 strands are physically activated and assembled. So it's deeper within our template where there's partial activations, partial assembly, and we struggle getting deeper inside because of all of just the stifled actions of the God entities working over all of these centuries and millennia to control us. Oh, that's a whole other story. But basically, with this action of imparting a portion of the higher self's consciousness into us, it's received. We receive it. Our developing fetus receives it. There is a similarity with our particular species, our construct, and theirs. So whichever higher self species will come, it could resonate with ours. So our inner consciousness technically is from them. Our body is ours. It's human. It has its own core essence, which is a human essence, which is with its own deeper DNA template that can be activated and assembled as we remove layers of death science behind us, as we naturally ascend to higher dimensions of more energetic integrity. But with this consciousness, it's amazing because we often don't feel like we are really at home on this planet. If we have a higher self, which actually not every human does have, because if a higher self didn't connect with them, then the developing fetus would just develop its own, its template would all give it its own consciousness and its own complete ability as a human to just act. They just don't have a deeper, more advanced awareness within. So with this consciousness, we often feel that we're not only human, that we might have been something more before. And that is actually different than a reincarnated experience, because many, many people have been reincarnated before, but not every human has been reincarnated either. I like knowing these things because there's so much diversity and so many options with how life presents itself. I have not been reincarnated before, and for me to know this, I go to my core essence and I'm saying, there's nothing human before this body and my entire makeup. What I sense was before me in one aspect of myself is my higher self. And I feel really close to where she is from. So with her coming to connect with Earth's morphogenetic field. She's actually from another galaxy that has more eternal based energy there. Not 100% eternal, but more eternal based. So to then travel to our Milky Way galaxy, where there's a lot of death signs here, she and many, many others have to wear an adaptable protective gear to even be in a lower dimension as well. So they travel to Earth's morphogenetic field, and then it depends upon the entity itself, whether they are from the Milky Way, whether they're from a lower dimension, whether they're from a higher dimension, or from beyond the Milky Way. Some stay nearby in a third dimensional place to Earth. Others stay further out in interspatial, interdimensional pathways, kind of along the Milky Way, more out in the Milky Way. But of course, they still have to wear protective gear, and they can't stay forever and ever and ever and ever, but they do stay to connect with us. But because of the density difference, there is a type of thick energetic veil between us. So the way to actually energetically connect with us, they send, I'll speak from my higher self's perspective. She sends she streamlines energy to me from her consciousness to mine, and that everything has like a type of purer core type of essence to it. And so when you actually know what pure energy is, eternal energy is, with that pure desire and intent of mine going out through me in my consciousness that's of her, it resonates and connects very closely. And so that actually thins the veil, and we're able to temporarily blend or merge our consciousness. And I think like her. I sometimes feel like I'm her, and I'm like, okay, I know I'm not her, but then you feel like you're your higher self too. And so it is very interesting to say the least. And like I said, it doesn't happen in eternal creation. This is kind of a different way of operating. It's not completely natural, but it is natural enough where we are. And it's beautiful when your higher self has pure intention to really connect and be with its lower self. And so this consciousness that I'm talking about, it is beyond, it's bigger than my inner core essence. It's like that's still kind of, it's more substance there. It's my template, my physical essence. It contains like an imprint of my higher self's essence, core essence, but of course it's not hers. But when I ascend naturally beyond earth, beyond death, when I'm eternally focused and connected, it's truly like you live from the inside out. The deepest integrity is in your core. And so when you go to become more of that core abundant self, the death mechanics and the atoms and the material just falls away as you go along. And so then you become more and more transfigured with your cells and atoms and DNA to your deepest, biggest template. And so the consciousness is even bigger than that. It extends further than that. It's your identity. And that's where the, I guess, trippiness lies in this, because we can feel like we are our higher self when we're not, because our consciousness is of that higher self. And the more aligned we are with our internal core essence, the more we act from our purest place of what we are, with all that integrity and abundance in ourself. It's like, I think like her so much, and my actions are more aligned, and and how I speak is better, and how I'm more thoughtful. So the consciousness is bigger, and it has this kind of overextending power to it, like through the barriers more. But the barriers still matter because we are in dense creation and we're not disembodied units. When we transfigure and become more of our deepest self, that's when we become very similar to the actual higher self's composition. And there is a true blending there where we then become the higher self because we've shed away everything else of any type of, I don't want to say lesser matter, but I do consider, death mechanics and lesser. I just do. Because they don't last. This is lasting. This is an eternal based essence. And so when that is what a higher self and lower self really eventually becomes, there is a true, that word, oneness. That's what's so frustrating with this oneness, because a lot of other entities, they know about this procedure, and then they extrapolate it to everything, to everyone, to gain a huge amalgamation and a huge following and all this energy to draw from. It's vampiric. One's true higher self, who is only one being in our entire universe, is through, the energy is through the core, like I said. Any entity that wants to gain access to your body, access to your DNA, access to your chakras, is an external based entity, completely external based. One's true higher self is not entirely external. She is external, it's her own self, but my consciousness, your consciousness, if you have a higher self, comes from that being. So there is a true type of merging, blending process when you are truly aligned, but it is natural. There's nothing forced, there's nothing possessive. And this is very crucial because there's nothing to control you, nothing to draw from you. You are whole, and you're even more enriched with the streamlined energy from the higher self. What it feels like to have my higher self resonance, I feel like if I'm thinking about complicated topics, especially for my book that I wrote, books, and just a lot of just thinking, I get these clear insights through me, and I get a type of validation. It's like an energetic kind of boost, like this joy at times, and I know that that's her. And so people who don't have a higher self, they won't feel that as strongly, but they still have something through them that is pure, that they can be aligned with and still have their own inner wisdom. The higher self is just kind of an additional, and you only feel it from within. There's nothing mental going on. There's nothing whispering in your ear. I'm just so grateful to finally know who she is. And so what a higher self also is that it's a being. And so it's similar to us, not the same in construction, obviously. And there are males and females with their own type of anatomy. And typically a female higher self has a female lower self, but it's not always true. And like I said, there's options, there's diversity. But I do know who mine is, and I know where she comes from. And I don't want to reveal much in this video about this because it's very, very special to me. But I do reveal more in my book. It is this big book, Eternal Humans and the Finite Gods. It's the 3rd edition, which I only recommend, with the most updates and clarifications of big topics. And it's a lot of information here. And yes, it's a very personal topic to have a higher self. It is your true identity, your true self. That is extremely special. It's the most precious energy and knowing of who you are. And when you can know that you are an integrated unit with all of your aspects and your physicality and your deeper essence, you can feel like you can do anything, even though you technically can't. But it builds bridges through and past your shortcomings to know this greater energy in you, this consciousness in you, how you can shift away from the negativities and the heavier emotions and energies, and you can work through it faster and have more awareness faster. When you have alignment with your deepest aspect of yourself that flows to your higher self, your consciousness, and it aligns and flows back to you, it's very filling of yourself. So what a higher self does not do, there is no contract, there's no forcefulness. If the human decides they want nothing to do with that they just want to do their own thing completely, and they're on this planet and follow religions and be with other energies, then the higher self can decide to leave and go back home. There's no forever bonding or binding. They're here for us. We are their main mission. But it's not binding. There's no contract. Anything that tells you that you're bound to anything, no. There are some uncommon cases where a higher self came with malintent. So the beauty in knowing your own individuality and your own power is that you can actually turn away from it. You have your own self already, your consciousness, your being. You can go your own path. You don't, even if there's some connection to it, you're not controlled by it. And also, it can learn from you. If it cares about you in any genuine way and not just a self-serving way, he or she can learn from you. You have your own integrity. What was imparted to us from our higher self did not take from that being. They have their own complete consciousness, regenerates, they're fine, they keep living. We have ours. We just got a gift. But it's still us. That's the beauty of knowing all of this, our true individuality. I also want to say that the higher self is not incarnated. It's already its own being. It just kind of traveled. It did not enter into another body. It was not in another form. And that's like a possession, assimilation thing with humans that I don't like at all. We are incarnated. We are embodied in the fetus. We have our own body. And they have their own body. So that's it. So to recap, a higher self is not vertical. It's not disembodied. It's not incarnated on earth. It doesn't have multiple selves, and it's not half of a whole or having divisions or fragments of itself. What it is, it connects to us naturally through our pure aligned consciousness. It is a distinct being that is male or female in its own type of physical structure, not like our body completely. It comes from a higher dimension, and it has imparted a portion of its consciousness to us, but it retains its own full essence. It does not hold us to a contract, force its way into our body in any way, or our fields, or our energy, or emotions. It doesn't implant thoughts. It does treat us with respect, treats us as an individual being who has an inherent connection, but is not controlled by it. We have a free will. But to be true to ourselves, we need to go within and sense our purest essence of ourselves and be aligned with that and be true to who we are, and not have an externalized way of living. Not imagining beings outside of us that we have to give our energy to. It's a natural flow within to the higher self and from the higher self. It's a beautiful connection as individual beings who are not entirely separate, but we're separate. Truly, we are free inside. And with the full connection with our full self, that becomes more and more activated and actualized, the more aligned we are to our core, the more full we are also with our higher self. It's like limitless with our consciousness, with our higher self that carries substance as well. The energy is what we feel through all the spaces of our being. I feel my higher self, and she is with me. And I really feel her right now. It's just the most wonderful thing, because you know that that energy truly is you. I hope I explained this, but you can read my book for more information all around, for the galactic struggles, the religious agendas, who we really are apart from that, and how we can lead our way with our own inner abundance. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and I wish you all a good day. Bye.